What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain. Welcome to episode number 305 of the A2D From Addict to Disciple podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, please like, subscribe, follow, and share the link with your friends. If you'd like to get our curriculum, you can get the paperback or ebook of From Ashes to Destiny on Amazon. Today's episode, number 305, is entitled The Second Arrow. And I'm in a sort of series here, unplanned, but it's evolving, I guess, where we're dealing with the thoughts of guys in recovery. Because really, our thoughts are the things that we need to learn to take captive before we end up giving ourselves permission to relapse. So we've had previous episodes on self-forgiveness, feeling invincible, burnout, the Never Again Park, and lots more if you scroll back through the episodes. But this one, we're going to look at a teaching from Buddha, a parable of the two arrows. And in this, he said, when misfortune comes our way, two arrows are flying at us. The first arrow brings the misfortune, the negative event or circumstances, and the pain of the impact of that misfortune. The second arrow represents the added suffering caused by our own reaction to that event, our self-blame or excessive worry. It's like we're shooting another arrow into an already existing wound. So the key points to remember in this, again, the first arrow represents the initial painful event itself, which is unavoidable. It's just one of life's circumstances or situations. People are going to be people. They're going to hurt us. Stuff happens. We're going to have negative things happen in our life, negative events happen in our life. But the second arrow represents our mental reaction to that event. And that's often what creates the most suffering. It's like we shoot ourselves. And we have the power to choose to avoid the second arrow. We can't control the first arrow, but we can choose how we react to it and avoid adding unnecessary suffering by not shooting the second arrow into our own wound. The Buddha explained, in life, we can't always control the first arrow. However, the second arrow is our reaction to the first. The second arrow is optional. You got that? We get to choose the second arrow. As Buddha says, it's optional. Choosing the second arrow is like clinging to the pain and wallowing in self-pity. And we get to where the suffering that we brought on ourselves as we wallow in this self-pity begins to define us. And motivational speaker Tim Fargo once said, don't let pain define you, let it refine you. So how can we use the pain to find enlightenment and wisdom so that we can process the pain without bringing the suffering? So it's, how do we dig in and get to enlightenment? How do we get into wisdom out of pain? Well, 13th century Persian poet Rumi said, the wound is the place where light enters you. And I think that's a key thing to remember right up front. When you're feeling a wound, when you're feeling the pain of that first arrow, how can you put yourself in a position that it doesn't create all the following suffering in our mind, in our thoughts, in our emotions? We have to find the way to let light enter us into that area of the wound so that it brings enlightenment, it brings wisdom. Helen Keller once said, although the world is full of suffering, it is full also of the overcoming of it. So how do we become overcomers? How do we get into that mode where we're processing things and looking for wisdom and enlightenment rather than clinging to the suffering. Well, in A to D, when we work with people in this situation, the key is really acknowledging the first arrow, the event that happened, being able to speak it through, see it as an event that was outside of our control, and it is what it is. And we just have to accept that that pain happened. And we use the Russian dolls, which I've talked about in several episodes. So looking at 3 of the dolls in that set, I want to ask you, what emotional pain are you feeling in reaction to this first arrow? You feeling anger, fear, maybe frustration or bitterness, or disrespect, that you've been disrespected by that event, or maybe shame or guilt that you're feeling you brought it on yourself. So you need to be able to find someone to talk to, a counselor, a coach, a sponsor, to work through that emotional pain that you're feeling, and acknowledging that just like we acknowledge the pain of the first arrow, but be able to find enlightenment from it. So our next step would be to say, what behavior have these emotions fueled in you? Have you been lashing out in rage? Have you been arguing with people and walking around with a chip on your shoulder, waiting for just a reason to show your anger and flare out at someone? Or maybe you've withdrawn and entered a time of isolation and depression, and in your conversations with people, even about the initial arrow, you're sort of denying it or just sort of fluffing it off like it's no big deal, when inside you're really boiling. So we would look at the 3rd Russian doll and say, what thoughts ignited these behaviors? What thoughts ignited and formed emotional spiraling in you, which really caused all those behaviors? And I want to encourage you in that area to write down your thoughts. And there may be questions in your mind or statements that you're saying that you really need to get out and talk to people about. Things like, these people always do this to me. No one likes me. I'm not a good person. I'm not worthy. Or maybe you're building it up even further and saying, I'll never fit in. Where do I really belong? This is my fate and my future. Well, if this is you, I want to say, stop overthinking. Loosen up. Give yourself a break. Can you see that these thoughts have become racing thoughts in your mind? And they're rapidly and repeatedly returning to the worst case scenario in your mind. And the result is you can't relax during the day. You may sort of take naps because you're just worn out, mentally and physically exhausted all the time. And then you can't sleep at night because your thoughts are keeping you awake. So what do you want in your brain? Do you want chaos, or do you want chill? Do you want to learn how to chill? The choice is yours. And I like an anonymous quote that says, I don't mean to be rude, but will you chill out, dude? So that's what I'm speaking to all of you today. Will you chill out, dude? I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to minimize the pain of the first arrow. But I am coming at you and saying, don't shoot that second arrow into the wound. Chill out. And some of you may be shooting a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th arrow into that wound. And rapper Ghostface Killah said, sometimes you gotta just chill. You gotta chill your thinking process. And I think that's the key. You have to figure out how to chill your thinking process, that taking the thoughts captive, but processing them, talking them out. You need to just sort of lay back. Again, chill out, de-stress, slow down, decompress, relax, put your feet up and just kick back. Because it's up to us. And we can choose, maybe if you need a starting point, choose one day every week to be fun day, F-U-N, fun day. and intentionally make that day a day where you're having fun, you're smiling, you're laughing, you're doing things that are fun to do, and people see you smiling. And so the key would be around, if I have to give you 3 keys that start with the letter L. First one would be learning. What are you learning as you're processing the pain? What enlightenment is happening? Do you love yourself? Have you forgiven yourself? Are you showing love to others? And are you laughing? Are you smiling and laughing? And that reminds me of the song by Louis Armstrong from the 50s, which is, when you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you. And some of the lyrics are, when you're smiling, keep on smiling. The whole world smiles with you. And when you're laughing, oh, when you're laughing, the sun comes shining through. And he goes on to say, but when you're crying, you bring on the rain. Can you see? It's important to chill out, to learn, to love, to laugh, to smile. It's up to us to choose to turn our wounds into wisdom. And that's a quote by Oprah Winfrey, where she said, turn your wounds into wisdom. Thanks for listening to this episode of the A2D From Addict to Disciple podcast. If you were saying that's me as you listened, then I want to encourage you to join a group, find a sponsor, find someone to talk to. If you'd like to message me, you can do it on the link in this podcast or by email at davidfroma2d@gmail.com, or go to my website, www.froma2d.org, and click on the contact page. As always, keep listening to future podcasts, stay safe, and stay resilient.